Okay, everybody. So Unit 1 continues as follows. The D2L should be up by now. Has anybody gone into D2L? All right, that's a no. All right. So go into D2L and start your soft chalks. Um, also, we're continuing with the notes and the sketches. Also, this is a good time to be working on your detailed drawing and finding an article for this unit. Um, all right, that takes care of Unit 1. With the Beast, you should have submitted your artwork. So I'm talking to the kids at Fall. So the kids at Park, I'm going to extend that deadline because of the ice storm, and I'll give you guys until the end of the day today, Wednesday, to turn in your artwork. But those of you at Falls, you should have already turned that in and looked at the example and followed the example. All right, the library assignment. Your book is due Monday. So I gave you guys last week and last weekend and this week and next weekend to go to the library and get a book based on your artwork or the art style or the artist. So there's instructions, video instructions on how to do that. So go and do it. Do not wait until the last minute. All right, maps are coming up, so make your maps, and your article assignment is coming up. So finding an article for your beast. Like I said, soft chalks are up and running now, so go in and do the soft chalks. And I'm extending the book reading to tomorrow. So it is your homework now for tonight is to go and read for 20-11A. So you go in, I explained this to you guys already, right? I showed you how to find it. All right, so that is your reading for tonight, and we'll have a pop quiz on it tomorrow. Basically, all I'm asking is that you know the artist, title, and date, and style, and then you also know, give me 2 facts that you learned from the reading. Right? Easy peasy, like 2 sentences. All right. Where did we leave off? What was our last artwork? We talked about the Medici, right? By the way, I updated the Medici speech with lots of Robocops. All right, and I talked about watched the video on humanism. We did the doors, is that right? And we did the contest. Okay, thank you. So we didn't do the story time. All right. All right, let's start with this slide. All right, so there is a contest of to design a new door, or not design the door, but design the decoration on the door. And 7 artists were competing to get the commission for sculpting the new patterns on the door. And there were 2 finalists that they couldn't decide who they were. And those 2 finalists were Filippo Brunelleschi and Lorenzo Ghiberti. So here are the contest rules: is that they had to show the story of the sacrifice of Isaac. It had to be in bronze, and it had to be in the shape of a quatrefoil. What's a quatrefoil, you ask? Well, that is the quatrefoil there on the left. It's kind of like a square that's at a 45-degree angle, and then each side of the square has a half circle on it. All right, so let's get into the story time of the sacrifice of Isaac. So here is Isaac. He's a very old guy. I think he's 100 years old, and he wants to have a large family with his wife. Now he's had other children with his, like, I don't know, mistresses or second wives or whatever they are, but he wants to have a large family with his actual wife. But he's getting pretty old and he can't have children. But God tells Abraham that he will have more children than there are stars in the sky. And then, so he says to his wife, "Hey, let's have kids." And she says, "No, we're too old." He's 100, she's 90. So they cannot have children. But a miracle happens. All right. She gets pregnant. She gives birth to Isaac, his one and only son. And he raises his son to a young man or to a child. And he loves his son. His son loves him. And then one day, God tells Abraham that he has to sacrifice his one and only son. And Abraham is very confused by this, but he trusts God and he has faith in God and he does God's will. So he takes Abraham, as instructed, to a distant mountain. They climb up the mountain, and then at the top of the mountain, Abraham makes an altar for the sacrifice. And then he binds his son Isaac and puts his son Isaac on the altar and is just about to sacrifice his one and only son when an angel comes down and stops it and says, "No, no, we're just testing you. We're just kidding." Oh, by the way, speaking of a test, at the end of the period today, we are having a lockdown drill. All right, so we're going to lose some time there as well. All right. All right, so back to the contest. So in this museum, the Brughello Museum in Florence, we're going to go into this big room, and way over there we have the two finalists. These are the competition panels. The one from Ghiberti and one from Brunelleschi. What kind of sculpture is this? Did I hear it? What? That is correct. All right. Relief sculpture. I went over this a lot last semester. So if you remember this from last semester, that's great. Have a couple new people, so this is new information for them. A relief sculpture is sculpture that is carved into a wall or flat surface. Low relief. Oh, did I go too fast? All right. Low relief is sculpture where it extends only slightly from its background without any undercuts. And this is also called, looks like bas relief, British pronounced bas relief. Ebenezer Scrooge says bah humbug, and art historians say bas relief. BAS is pronounced ba. All right, high relief is when the sculpture extends half or more of their actual depth from the background and has deep undercuts. If you look at the arm of the centaur on this, you can see that it is separated from the background. That's a sure sign of high relief. Another sure sign of high relief is deep shadows. Are we good to go? All right. So is this high relief or is this low relief? It's high relief, yes. It comes out far from the background, and it has deep shadows and it has undercuts in it. All right, so I want you guys to know this one. This is The Sacrifice of Isaac by Filippo Brunelleschi. All right, so we can see this is the moment where Abraham is just about to sacrifice his son. You can see that his son is on the altar, and the angel comes in and puts the arm on Abraham's arm and stops this. Down below, we have a horse or a donkey. In the lower left, we have a figure, and in the lower right, we have a figure. To the left of Isaac, we have a ram. That's a part of the story as well, because after the angel stops Abraham, then they sacrifice a ram. But if we get in really close, we can see the detail of the face of Abraham. He looks both determined and confused. Isaac looks like he's having a very bad day. And then down in the lower left, we have this kid picking at his feet, and that is a reference to a Roman sculpture. So there's some references to the classical art. Now let's take a look at Ghiberti's sculpture. Write this information down. This is another artwork. On the test, I want you to know the difference between these two sculptures. All right, one of the interesting things of this sculpture, it has this wonderful little swoop that goes from the upper left down to the lower right. It helps guide our eye around. So it's meant to represent the mountainside. And then if we look closely at Abraham and Isaac, it's the same part of the story. He's just about to sacrifice his son. And we have the ram up in the upper left of the quatrefoil. And then I want to remind you guys what foreshortening is. I talked about this a little bit at the end of last semester. But foreshortening is making things look like they're coming out at you or going back into space. If you look at this arm, the arm on the top has zero foreshortening in it. It is straight out. But as it comes forward, it looks like it's coming into our space. Even though we're looking at a photograph and the photograph is flat, it has the illusion of coming into our space. And so modern artists, use that foreshortening to make things look like they're either close or far away. And if you remember last semester, the Sumerians, the Egyptians, the Mesoamericans, none of them used foreshortening. Everything was very flat. But at the end of the semester, we looked at Giotto, and his angels up here are coming out at us. If you look at the angel in the upper left, his arm is coming out at us. It's not just a flat. The one in the upper right is coming out at us. The one in the lower right is coming out at us. So that is what is happening up here. If you look at the angel on the left, that is Brunelleschi's. That is a side view of the angel. But in the upper right, the Ghiberti angel is foreshortened and is coming out at us. So that's one of the main differences between these two. One artist is using a new tool of foreshortening. All right, if you look at Ghiberti's nude right here of Isaac, this is the first classical nude since the classical era, since ancient Greece and Rome. You remember when we went through all that medieval art, there were no nudes. Everybody was covered up, with the exception of Adam and Eve, but we rarely saw them. Started with the Byzantine all the way up through the late Gothic. No naked people. And so now it's coming back into art because there is a resurgence of interest in ancient Greek and Roman, not only art, but writing and philosophy as well. So this is another difference between the two. Ghiberti has classical art in his, and he has foreshortening, whereas Brunelleschi does not. And then just a compositional difference that Ghiberti's is, you see this curve of Isaac is reflected in the curve of Abraham, whereas Brunelleschi has these harsh angles in it. And then the last thing I want to show you the difference between these two is if you turn the bronze around, Ghiberti used less bronze. So he has these open spaces, whereas the Brunelleschi filled in the back totally with bronze, and Ghiberti had open spaces in the back. And the reason why this is important is that bronze is one of the most expensive materials to make art out of, if not the most expensive. So then Ghiberti's then becomes cheaper than Brunelleschi's to make. So then who do you think was the winner, either Brunelleschi or Ghiberti? That's all right. It's first period. I get it. All right. It was Ghiberti. Ghiberti won the contest. And so then he makes a bunch of images for the doors of the baptistry. And then later on, 20 years later, he is asked to make another set of doors for the baptistry. And then in the other, in the 1420s, I think the story, I can't remember what the story was, but they were from the New Testament. All right, are there any questions about anything that we've covered so far about the contest and the Medici? All right, so Brunelleschi and Ghiberti are enemies of each other, or they cannot stand each other. So they had this contest, and Ghiberti won the contest. Brunelleschi lost the contest, and so we're about to see another rivalry between the two. All right, do you remember this church that has no dome? All right, so in the mid 1400s, there's still no dome on the church, and then they make a contest to see who can design the best dome. Now, why isn't there a dome already? Well, they made it, the design was they're going to make the biggest dome ever. And they figured that by the time we finish building this church, we will have figured out how to make this big dome. Well, they finished building the church, and they still can't figure out how to make a big dome. Because, do you remember the dome on the Pantheon? All right, how was that dome able to stay up? Or how was that dome supported? And the reason why the Pantheon was able to support such a large dome is it had amazingly thick walls that supported the dome. Well, the new church doesn't have these amazingly thick walls to support a dome of that weight. How did the Hagia Sophia have such a huge dome? The answer is there in the slides. They used pendentives. All right. Well, the new church doesn't have pendentives. It wasn't designed with pendentives, so it cannot have a dome like that. how did the Gothic cathedrals have such giant spaces on the inside and support all that weight with all the windows? They used a flying buttress, but this church was not designed with flying buttresses. And typically, you could build a dome by building a scaffolding underneath, but there's not enough wood in the area to make a scaffolding that big. So making a scaffolding wasn't an option. So here's how the story goes of how it was built. Brunelleschi presents to the Dome Committee his plan for the dome, and he's basically saying, this is what it's going to look like. And they say, well, how will you build it? And so he says, how do you make an egg stand up? And the committee is stumped. And then he crashes the egg on the table and it stays up like that. And the committee said, well, we could have thought of that. And Brunelleschi says, you would say the same thing if we saw your plans, if you saw my plans. And the committee says, all right, well, show us your plans. And Brunelleschi says, no, I'm not going to show you my plans. And then the committee says, if you don't show us your plans, we're going to hire Ghiberti to oversee your work. That's his enemy. That's the guy that won against the previous one. And so Brunelleschi throws a massive temper tantrum, and he has to be escorted and forcibly removed from that committee by the palace guards. So anyways, here's how the dome kind of works. By the way, I don't know that he never had the plans, or they were all in his head, or he had the plans, built the dome, and then destroyed the plans, because there's no evidence of the plans. Nobody's ever been able to see them. So nobody really knows exactly how he built this. All right, we can look at what he did, but there is still a mystery as to how this dome was built. Anyways, his idea was to have two shells of the dome, an inner wall and an outer wall. The inner wall supports the weight, and the outer dome is a protective dome. And then there's an empty space between the two. Now, on a dome this big, gravity is going to push down and force that dome to expand out. And so in order to stop this, he used these bands or belts around the dome to keep it from expanding like that, much like the bands that you have on a barrel to prevent the deformation of the dome. All right, and then he used this herringbone technique of the bricks. So if you look at these bricks, most of the bricks are horizontal, but you notice that some of the bricks are vertical. All right, and that is one of the tricks that he did in order to make this dome work. So I found this video of how the herringbone technique keeps the dome's shape. So we're going to skip to...
Construire le dôme.
No, we're going to skip to...
Un concours est lancé et c'est l'architecte Brunelleschi.
3 minutes. All right.
Est autoportante à chaque étage d'anneaux de briques.
All right, so here they are building a dome with only horizontal bricks. But as the dome gets smaller on the inside and the angle gets steeper, those bricks will begin to fall. So watch this. You put the brick on and it falls in. So how do you stop that from happening?
Il faut construire une structure de soutien temporaire pendant la construction qu'on enlève à la fin. Mais comment faire si on ne veut pas utiliser une telle structure de soutien?
So here they rebuild that dome with the herringbone technique that Brunelleschi used.
Ancré dans l'étage inférieur de briques pour soutenir une portion d'arc durant leur construction. Même sans mortier, chaque section de brique tient parfaitement.
And there, when you put in the brick, it holds its shape. All right, so that is one of the things I wanted to show you. All right, that this unique shape of, or the unique brick pattern, And it was, and plus not only that, but tons of math is involved in this dome. And when I did my grad school work, I had to read about all the very complicated mathematical um, uh, topics that are going on in how he built this dome. So it is quite an achievement. And at the end of it, ta-da! All right, he built the dome. All right, and Ghiberti never figured out how he did it. So now the score is tied. All right, we're going to move on to another building, and that is the Orson Michele. I've seen this spelled three different ways. I've seen it spelled with three words, Orson Michele. I've seen it spelled with two words, Orson and Michele. And I've seen it spelled with one word, Orson Michele. And it is a very boring looking building from here. It's just a big, square, rectangular building. But the interesting thing is down at street level, we have all these sculptures in the wall of the building. And if we get closer, we can look at this one right here. So each of these sculptures, by the way, this building is a grain silo, and it was the grain guild had this building, and then it was converted into a church, I believe. But the guilds all had a representative sculpture on the side. So, for example, on the left is a sculpture commissioned by the Stonemasons Guild. On the right is a sculpture commissioned by the Armorers Guild. Some are done in marble and some are done in bronze. And what did I just say about bronze? It's expensive, all right? So the ones done in bronze, excuse me, are from a guild that has a lot more money and they could hire an artist to make a bronze sculpture. Also, I just want to point out the same thing back in the Roman art that beards equals age. So a bearded person is older and a bearded person is wiser. All right, we got a story time. We got the story of St. George and the dragon. So, St. George is a knight and he is going through the countryside. He meets an old man, and the old man is telling him about a dragon that is terrorizing a nearby village. And this village is right next to a pond or a lake or something, a body of water. And every day, that dragon comes out of the water and wreaks havoc on the village. They tried appeasing the dragon by giving it all the village's food, but still the dragon attacked the village. They tried giving the dragon all their cattle, and still the dragon attacked the village. They tried giving the dragon all their gold and money, and still the dragon attacked the village. They tried attacking the dragon and killing it, but the dragon was too fierce and killed many of them. So then they had a plan that the next thing they're going to try is sacrificing themselves to the dragon. So they would break up pots and write the names of their children and put them on the shards of the pots. And then they'd have a lottery. They would take out a name, and that would be the child that would be sacrificed to the dragon. So if that child was selected, the guards would come and put the kid out there to be sacrificed by the dragon. And this had been going on for some time. So the whole village is devastated. The whole village is saddened. Everybody has lost somebody that they know and love. Then the king, his daughter gets selected by the lottery. And he begs to everybody, please, I will give you all the riches of my kingdom. And the villagers are like, nope, you got to be like everybody else. All right, you got to put your daughter out there too. So now we have a damsel in distress out there with the dragon, about to be consumed by the dragon. Here comes St. George, and he has an epic battle with the dragon. And eventually he slays the dragon. You guys love my choices of images for this epic battle. I think it's hilarious. All right. Anyways, he kills the dragon and saves the village, and then marries the daughter, and then everything is all good. So let's take a look. We're in that back in that same room. You can see down here, right there is the contest that we just saw. Now we're going to look at Saint George. All right. And like I said, he is commissioned by the Guild of Armorers and Sword Makers. So it is highly likely that he had a sword in this hand that is gone now. And he has he is not standing in contrapposto. Remember that contrapposto is leaning on putting your weight on one foot, right, on one side, and then the other side becomes lax. But he is at attention, and the weight is on both legs. If we look closely at him, do you notice this hole in his head? All right, it is quite likely that he had a metal helmet on that he wore that was made by the Armorers Guild. And in his face, he expresses uncertainty and anxiety. He has emotion in his face. And we can also compare this to the jam figures.
Good morning. Pardon this interruption. In just a few minutes, guys, we will be conducting a lockdown drill. Please follow the established lockdown procedures promptly and calmly. This includes moving to designated areas safely, and remaining there until you receive further instructions. Again, this is a drill. We will begin the lockdown drill in just a second. Thank you.
All right, so if you look down below, it has a relief carving of him killing the dragon, and there is a symbol of the Armorers Guild, their shield, and we have some high relief, but most of it is very low relief, and it shows a little bit of perspective, and it shows that she is the fabric is influenced by classical Greek and Roman architecture. All right, we're going to stop there and have our drill. I'm going to go ahead and turn off the video.